looking at Job chapter 21. And this is going to be Job's response. Remember, last week we had Zophar. He had his speech to Job and was telling Job how he just feels that, like all the other ones, he's used the word hypocrite. He's telling Job he's got wickedness, and he's just explaining to Job, the way I see the world, Job, this kind of stuff don't happen to people unless they got some kind of hidden sin. And he is dogmatic about this. Job, I know you've done something. And that's just been the drumbeat of each and every one of these guys that have been talking to Job. Now, Job's response that we're going to see today, and what he has been consistent with, is that, listen, I may not be perfect, and I'm sure I got my flaws, but I am not a hypocrite. I am not hiding any sin. Anything that I've done wrong that I know of, I bring it to the Lord. I'm not trying to pretend to be something I'm not. And Job was hanging on to that. And we're going to see some more of that today. But what we've also have been seeing is that from time to time, Job has been starting off talking to his friends, and then his emotions and his spirit raise up in him, and he starts complaining to God and telling God, while he's telling the friends, what's going on, and talking about the things that he sees from his perspective that he don't think is right. Now, once again, Job is, even though he's not ridiculing God, he's still telling God, there are things I just don't get and I don't understand, which is true. There is things like that, and he's going to do that again today. He's going to do some more of that. So let's take a listen. Job chapter 21.
Chapter 21. But Job answered and said,
Hear diligently my speech, and let this be your consolations. Suffer me that I may speak, and after that I have spoken, mock on. As for me, is my complaint to man? And if it were so, why should not my spirit be troubled? Mark me, and be astonished, and lay your hand upon your mouth. Even when I remember, I am afraid, and trembling taketh hold on my flesh. Wherefore do the wicked live? Become old, yea, are mighty in power. Their seed is established in their sight with them, and their offspring before their eyes. Their houses are safe from fear, neither is the rod of God upon them. Their bull gendereth, and faileth not. Their cow calveth, and casteth not her calf. They send forth their little ones like a flock, and their children dance. They take the timbrel and harp, and rejoice at the sound of the organ. They spend their days in wealth, and in a moment go down to the grave. Therefore they say unto God, Depart from us, for we desire not the knowledge of thy ways. What is the Almighty that we should serve him? And what profit should we have if we pray unto him? Lo, their good is not in their hand. The counsel of the wicked is far from me. How oft is the candle of the wicked put out, and how oft cometh their destruction upon them? God distributeth sorrows in his anger. They are as stubble before the wind, and as chaff that the storm carrieth away. God layeth up his iniquity for his children. He rewardeth him, and he shall know it. His eyes shall see his destruction, and he shall drink of the wrath of the Almighty. For what pleasure hath he in his house after him, when the number of his months is cut off in the midst? Shall any teach God knowledge, seeing he judgeth those that are high? One dieth in his full strength, being wholly at ease and quiet. His breasts are full of milk, and his bones are moistened with marrow. And another dieth in the bitterness of his soul, and never eateth with pleasure. They shall lie down alike in the dust, and the worm shall cover them. Behold, I know your thoughts, and the devices which ye wrongfully imagine against me. For ye say, Where is the house of the prince? And where are the dwelling places of the wicked? Have ye not asked them that go by the way? And do ye not know their tokens? That the wicked is reserved to the day of destruction. They shall be brought forth to the day of wrath. Who shall declare his way to his face? And who shall repay him what he hath done? Yet shall he be brought to the grave, and shall remain in the tomb. The clods of the valley shall be sweet unto him, and every man shall draw after him, as there are innumerable before him. How then comfort ye me seeing in your answers there remaineth falsehood.
Chapter 21.
All right.
But
So, as you can see, Job is at it again with his frustration and his concern that, like his friends that are coming to him, Job himself has a philosophy on how he thinks things work. Now, let's stop and let's stop looking at Job and let's look at us. Do we have a philosophy of how things work? What we go by is what we've experienced. We've seen things and we've watched good people have experiences. We've watched people who we would consider to be not godly have experiences. And what conclusions have we drawn from that? What do we kind of believe based on our own actions and interactions, and based on our ability to remember things happening to our parents, our family, our relatives, the different ones, and we come to our own conclusions, and we think we kind of have a feel for it. And it may work for you, but you got to keep in mind that in no way can we say, well, because I've had this experience, I know how God works. And that's the key. That's one of the things that I'm really gaining from this study, is that as much as I get to know God and get to seek and to discover about what he has revealed in his word, the more I recognize I don't know about him. The more I understand that he's bigger than what I could have ever imagined. And his ways are way more mysterious. We've heard this, the scripture that says, you know, the ways of the Lord are mysterious. He works in mysterious ways. We've heard that, but do we really comprehend what that's saying? What is it actually trying to describe or to actually say about God? And sometimes it's important for us to pause and to recognize how much we just don't know in the midst of what we do know based on what God has revealed. And you say, well, that sounds like double talk. Well, no, it's not. It's the reality of it. You know, it's you know a certain experience. I know what God has done what for me, and that we can speak to with total clarity. But how God works is different. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I know what, you know, carrots and beets taste like to me, but I don't know how to make them. You say, well, you plant the seed. Yeah, but I can't make the seed. So there's a lot of things that I can experience and can tell you a lot about the experience. I can tell you what they taste like, but if I had to go and out of elementary particles try to create a seed for carrots or beets or for anything, I couldn't do it. But I can experience the results of it. So similar to God, and that's even a very poor analogy because God's even greater than that. But we can experience God. We can be like David said, oh, taste and see what? That the Lord is good. And we can get a good flavor for the nature and the actions of God. But don't get confused into thinking, well, that's that. I've got God, you know, all wrapped up here. I understand him now. And that's not what we are able to do. So with that being said, let's look at what Job is talking about here. So it says, but Job answered, and he's answering Zophar. And once again, he's also going to be speaking to the Lord, and said, hear diligently my speech, and let this be your consolation. Suffer me that I may speak, and after that I have spoken, mock on. So what Job is saying here, he says, now I need you to really try to listen to me this time. You ever be talking with somebody and you're talking and you say something one way and you can tell they didn't get it. Then you try to say it another way and you're just like, well, I still don't think they get what I'm trying to say. So then you kind of say, listen, would you please listen to my words? Listen to what I'm saying. I'm hoping that you get it. And that's what Job is saying. And then he's saying, and when I'm finished, if you at least try to understand me, then you can go ahead and mock on. Because what he has come to the conclusion of, that what I'm about to say, I know is not going to change your mind. I tried to do that earlier when we were discussing things. I tried to get you to see things my way. And so what Job is saying now, I'm going to just relay some things as I see it. And I'm going to give you my feelings about what I think. But I know when I'm finished, you're going to keep on mocking. You're not going to change. And so Job is kind of like, okay, I'm not changing you. But what I am going to do is give you my heart. I'm going to show you what I'm feeling here. So he says, so listen to me, suffer me, hear what I got to say, and then when it's all done, mark on. Look at verse 4. It says, as for me, is my complaint to man? And he's asking a question. He's saying, am I making this complaint to man? You complain to somebody that you think can what? Make a difference. So to answer Job's question, it's kind of a rhetorical question where he knows the answer is no, I'm not talking to man. My real complaint is to who?
God.
It's to God. So he says, as for me, is my complaint to man? Question mark. And if it were so, why should not my spirit be troubled? All right. Because see, if it was only man you're dealing with, now you're in some trouble because man's only going to seek after what? His own. So the fact that he's complaining to God means that Job still trusts God to hear his complaint. Because see, we can complain to man and man can be like, I could really care less about you. Some people you can complain to them and they listen, and 5 minutes after you walk away, they don't even remember your name. They don't even know what your problem was because they really don't care. But what Job is letting you know, I'm not complaining to man. I'm bringing this before God, which is why he kind of resolved to his friends, when I finish saying all this, y'all can keep on mocking because I know the issue is not really how y'all think anyway. I know what you think. I disagree with it. And that's the beauty of what I think Job is trying to do here. Job is trying to say, I understand what you're saying. And I can even take your argument and help you argue it. The problem is I just disagree with it. I don't agree with your argument. And that's an important thing to any kind of conversation. We could learn that today in our political world and all the stuff that we deal with. Hearing somebody and at least understanding. The scripture says that all thy getting, get an understanding. So it's not that I have to agree, but I do need to try to understand what you're saying. Because if I understand what you're saying, I can get your viewpoint. Now I can go and give you a suggestion based on what is true about how you see something. But if I don't see things the way you see them, all I'm giving you is truth about how I see it. But I need to be able to take a moment and understand how you see it. Now I can try to guide you from your perspective and from your point of view, if I feel I have some guidance at all. There are some times when I understand somebody else's point of view, my answer to them is, I don't know what to tell you. Mm-hmm. I don't. You explained yourself, and I'm just in the same kind of predicament that you are. You don't know what to do, and I will agree with you. I don't know what to do either. But then when you don't know what to do, what do? You go to God. And that's what Job is doing here. So he says, mock me. In other words, he's saying, look at me. He's not saying mock me in this sense now where he's saying, tease me, but he's saying mark me, put a label on me. Look at me. And be astonished. So he said, when you really look at my circumstance, look at really what happened to me, you should be astonished. He says, and lay your hand to your mouth. And when you be astonished and you put your hand over your face and everything. So Job is saying, be that kind of astonished. Yes, I know my situation is jacked up. Job is saying, I know I got a problem here. And I know that anybody that would look at me and understand where I was and where I am now would be like, oh my goodness, what happened to you? And Job is saying, I get it. And I accept that. My circumstance deserves that kind of reaction. You should be reacting to that. Lost everything I had, children and health, wealth, everything. Yes, you should have hand over mouth. Look at 6. Even when I remember I am afraid. Job says when he looks back and thinks about it, it makes him what? Afraid. How could something like this happen? And tremble, take it hold of my flesh. In other words, his flesh gets all goosebumpy and tingling about how could this happen? And he feels the emotion of the stress and the emotion of the how could it go from this to that? Right? And man, those are those type of things, man. When things like that happen, it's like you wake up one day, man, and you get that bad news, and you're trying to figure out, well, how could that happen? How could we be here? How could we be talking about this? And that's one of those things that can be very disheartening. But he goes on, and he says, verse 7, he says, wherefore do the wicked live? Now he's saying, let's look at the wicked. You guys say I'm wicked. Let's look at the wicked. All right? So he says, wherefore do the wicked live and become old? Yea, are mighty in power. So he says, when you look at the wicked and you want to say all this bad stuff that happens to the wicked, when I look at the wicked, look at them. I see them living to an old age, and I see them becoming what? Mighty in power. Well, do we see that in our day? Mm-hmm. Right? We see some people that are very godless that have lived long lives and have had powerful influence on society. Of course. We could just name one person. Look at how powerful and how much influence Satan has. But yet there is nothing more wicked than him. But yet God's allowing the wicked to have their day. And man, can we just try to understand that? In our study that we're going through in Exodus, when the Lord introduced and told them they're going to be conquering the Hittites and the Hivites and the Jebusites and the Canaanites. And what he's saying, but you're not going to do it yet, because I need them to stay there for a little longer, because their wickedness is not full. So what God is saying is they're having their day now, allowing them to have their time. They could turn to me, but they're not going to. So I'm allowing them to have that day. So similarly, and we're going to see that a lot, when we see these types of situations, it gives a shadow and a glimpse at what God allows evil to do. Even in this whole story of Job, it's amazing that for right now, wickedness is having its day in the life of Job. It has brought Job to this point. And so Job just emphasizes this, not only from a standpoint of the spiritual wickedness, which he doesn't even know is part of why he's going through this, but it's the root cause of all wickedness. And that's why Job, from his own spirit, can pick up the trace truth about wickedness. Some of these guys live long, wicked, powerful lives. And he goes on. Their seed is established. In other words, they have children, and their children become just as powerful as them. Their seed is established in their sight. They get to see their children. They don't die before their children get to be adults. They live to see their children get established. They see in their sight with them, and their offspring before their eyes. All right? And grandchildren. They get to see the grandchildren and children, all of them doing well. Wicked people, this is what Job is saying. And what Job is saying is true. He says, so you want to say I'm wicked. This is what I see sometimes happening with the wicked. Look at verse 9. Their houses are safe. All right? There's no attack on the house is what he's saying. Their houses are safe from fear, neither is the rod of God upon them. Look what he says. He's going to go on with this. Their bull gendereth and fail not. In other words, their bull has one generation after another. In other words, their livestock are healthy and are reproducing and are producing next generations of livestock. They failed not. The cow calf and casts not her calf. All right, so the cow grows, takes care of the calf. It grows. It does well. Verse 11, they send forth their little ones like a flock, and their children dance. In other words, they watch their children grow and send them forth in delight and in joy, to the point where these children are Who is Job talking about? Wicked folks. He going, this is what I've seen happen to wicked folks. Your guys' theology works, and it is true to a certain degree. But what Job is saying, you can't tell me that you haven't seen wicked folks go through this. So if your statement about wicked folks is so true, why do some wicked folks have this then for their life? So what Job is saying is there's inconsistency in what you're trying to say. You're saying, I must be wicked. That's why I'm suffering. Okay, well, how about these wicked people that don't suffer? That don't match up. Your spiritual theology, your theological math is not equaling a proper equation. It's not coming out to the right outcome. But he goes on. He says their children dance, verse 12. They take the timbrel and the harp and rejoice at the sound of the organ. All right, so they're just having a wonderful time. Who is this? Wicked folks. Do we see this in our day? Of course we do. 13. They spend their day in wealth. Wow, no, wicked folks don't have money. Of course they do, right? Matter of fact, that's the one thing that they make sure they have. All right? It says, and in a moment, go down in the grave. So what he's saying is they don't suffer long, dying, disease deaths. They enjoy their stuff, and then they go to bed and wake up don't wake up the next morning. They just have one of those peaceful deaths. Now, what Job is saying is, tell me you haven't seen wicked folks live like this. You have to have. And if that's the case, then what you were saying, that why I am going through wicked, my trouble is because I'm wicked, it doesn't equate, because we've seen wicked folks actually have good natural lives. So Job is breaking down their argument. 14. Therefore they say unto God, this is what they say, depart from us. So the wicked folks saying what? They don't believe, don't need God. For we desire not the knowledge of thy way. Wow. How many people say, I don't want to know. You go to talk to them, well, let me tell you something about the Lord. I don't want to know nothing about God. I don't want nothing about that Jesus stuff. I don't want nothing about that Bible stuff. And they reject it real quick. That's not how I do it. And they'll tell you in a moment, I did this myself. I built this, whatever it is they think they built, and I established this, and I did all this with my own strength, my own wisdom, my own ingenuity. And they believe that that's just how it is. And when you say, well, I thank God for giving me strength, they don't like hearing that, because they don't want to give God any credit. All right? So, but they keep on. Look at verse 15. What is the Almighty that we should serve him? Wow. So, when you look at a standpoint of being able to say, I don't know who he is, and if there was an Almighty, why should I serve him? And what profit should we have if we pray unto him? And so what Job is saying, people that talk like this have had good cattle, good calves, good bulls, good houses, children dancing, grandchildren. All these wicked folks that say all this kind of stuff to God can experience some wonderful natural lives. Mm-hmm. So, Job then would say, if I would interject here for him, he would go, so why isn't that happening to me? If you, Bildad, Zophar, and Eliphaz, say I'm wicked, how come I'm not experiencing this then? It goes on. Lo, their good is not in their hand. The counsel of the wicked is far from me. All right, so what he's saying, I don't have the profits of wicked folks. That's not something I have in my hand. That kind of stuff is not part of me. It's far from me. I'm not dealing like that. Job says. 17. How oft is the candle of the wicked put out? So he's letting them know. I know the candle of the wicked will eventually get put out. Well, how often does that happen? It happens all the time. May not happen the way you think it should happen. And how oft cometh the destruction upon them? All right. the wicked will be destroyed, but not always in the way that we think of it. All right. And when I say wicked, let me just make sure I clarify. Those that reject God, because there are a lot of wicked people that will come to God towards the end of their life, and they will have all the blessings and the rewards that God has to offer. And sometimes we think that's unfair. You mean he lived 90 years wicked, and then he lives 2 years serving God, and he's gonna get everything that somebody lived their whole life getting? Yes, that's that parable that Jesus gave about the people that were out there looking for work, and he brought some in the morning and had them working, and then he saw some more out there around lunchtime and told them to go in and work. I'll pay you too. And then towards the end of the day, 1 hour left, he told them to come in. And then it was all said and done. It got time to pay them. He paid all of them the same amount of money. And the people that were working the whole day thought he was unfair. And God said, how can I be unfair? I paid you what I agreed to pay you. Are you mad at me because I'm being generous to these other guys? And so that's the aspect sometimes that we can forget. And what that story helps us to understand is when we think we know how things work, in our world, the way we rationalize things, the person that worked 8 hours a day should get more money than the person that worked 1 hour. That's how our world works. That's our reality. That's how it should be from our perspective. But what Jesus was saying by that parable and what Job is pointing out here, that's not how God works. God works differently, and we need to reckon with that and accept it. But yet, from our standpoint, we'll start calling God unfair. Oh, because God is not measuring up to what I consider to be right? So now God's got to go according to my measure of goodness. No. So we got to make sure we correct ourselves and humble down to the fact that even if I don't get it, God is still good. And so, like Jesus said, why would you be mad at me because I'm generous? So yeah, if they come in and do well, they at the end of their life they should get a wonderful thing. So verse 17, let me read that again. How oft is the candle of the wicked cut off, and how oft cometh the destruction upon them? God the distribution sorrow in His anger. All right. When it talks about the anger of the Lord, once again, it's an anthropomorphic phrase. It's not like God is angry where He's lost His temper. It's just a way for us to understand the action of God that we can comprehend. God's anger is not anything like how man's anger is, but it's something that we can't actually, I don't have a word for it. You go, well, what is it? I can't tell you. It's just God's dealing with things that are not agreeing and lining up with what He has revealed. So if you don't line up to what is revealed, you're going to suffer a consequence. And the best way I can explain it is, when you have a fire going, you're cooking something on the stove or you got a barbecue pit, there's a area where you want to be able to work around the pit and you're going to be fine. But if you cross the line and put your hand on one of them hot coals, well, you're going to suffer. Now, that coal is not mad at you. That coal is not saying, I'm going to get you. It's just that you put yourself in a situation where you now are experiencing what coal does to things that are near it that are not supposed to be near it. And so when we get into places that we're not supposed to be, we're going to suffer the consequences. And it is described oftentimes as the anger or the wrath of God. But it's not that God is mad, it's just that you're in the wrong place. Now, I don't know if I can explain it any better than that, but God is not, God does not lose His temper. It's just that wicked folks are in the wrong position in relationship to God and are going to get what happens when you're in the wrong position. And that is like being on that coal. You're going to feel the burn. You're going to feel the fire. You're going to feel the heat. And when you're in the wrong position with God, you're going to feel something that is not what you want to feel. All right. It says, verse 18, they are as stubble before the wind. wicked folks are not really established, though they seem to be. But Job recognizes this. And as chaff that are in the storm carried away. Look at verse 19. God layeth up his iniquity for his children. He rewardeth him, and he shall know it. All right. When it comes down to God dealing with individuals, God already told us that he will hold accountable to the second and the third and the fourth generation those that hate him. But he's merciful to thousands of generations to them that seek him. Which is why when you're coming from a situation where you have people that don't want anything to do with God, you're going to need a deliverance, because there is a natural, I'm just wondering where you say it's natural, there is a spiritual attachment that sometimes can happen that has the right to stay with you for a period of time. Just like in this story, Satan was given the right to stay with Job for a period of time, and he stayed with him, and while he was attached to Job, Job suffered. And so when you have people that have these things that go into their lives, these things have, for lack of a better word, spiritual rights to stay. I have the right to be with this person and his children and his grandchildren. That's the spiritual obligation I have. And the only way to get set free from that is the power of God. But God can break every stronghold. Mm-hmm. And that's an important thing to keep in mind. All right.
I have a question on that. On a third generation, that's Satan generation, because it says, if this is wicked, it says, as you read it down the aisle, it says, when you get to 26, it says, thou shalt lay down and like in the dark dust, and the worms shall cover them.
Yeah.
So a third generation of Satan is someone in a generation is wicked, and therefore right with Satan generation.
Well, what the Lord is saying is that if someone does that, they align themselves with spiritual.
Yeah, but it's connected with, you say, generations.
Right.
So it's connected with Satan, third generation. It could be connected into families that got a tree or whatever, and they third generation.
Right.
If they wicked, if someone wicked, and say like they lie on somebody, or somebody got raped, and then the whole family covered it up, and everybody goes to court, and then it's like everybody in that courthouse gets penalized, just like the third generation of Satan. Is that correct?
Well, everyone will have to deal with it. Now, the person that goes through the person that goes through the trauma certainly has to deal with the trauma deeply, but everybody's hurt. Everybody has that dealing with it. Everybody, when I say everybody, people sympathize and they feel bad. You know, like you gave the example of somebody being raped. Well, think about how the parent, how the mother, how the father feels about that, and their ability to handle their frustrations and their anger. And if we don't do the same thing, because you can carry that with you, even though it did not happen to you, you can carry that with you, and it will hang on to you. So you're going to have to learn. I don't have to get up to God, because see, what we come across in your mind is, okay, well, the next time I see this dude, I'm going to kill him. Well, that ain't.
I won't kill him. I'll give him to Satan to kill him.
Well, that's.
And God will be there.
Right, but I'm just giving them.
The generation, with the third generation.
Right.
Of the family tree.
Right. Now, I wasn't saying that you would
put their votes in. So.
Right. I wasn't saying. I was just giving an analogy on how everybody that's involved within the wickedness, the person affected and the people around them, all have to give it to God. And that's what Job is pointing out. And I think that's the nature of what Job is trying to say here, is that there is wickedness that happens, and it's going to be dealt with. And if you don't give it to God, it will affect you. And that's the key here. And he goes on, and look what he says here in verse 21. We're going to get down to 26, the one that you were pointing on, in just a bit, because that's an important verse. It says, in 20, it says, his eyes shall see his destruction, and he shall drink of the wrath of the Almighty. So what Job is saying is, one thing I do know about the wicked will see their day. So, that whole aspect of people doing wrong, and like you gave the analogy, a person has to now go to court and deal with things and whatnot. From our perspective, it's a struggle, it's a fight. We're trying to prove, we're trying to bring witnesses and evidence and everything. But the ultimate reality is that God is going to allow that person that has done wrong to see. You're going to see what you did wrong, and you're going to see the cause, and you and your eyes and yourself and your consciousness will deal with the discipline. You will deal with the wrath of God. You're going to see it. You're going to be placed in a situation where you are in a position in God that is not a comfortable position. Like I gave the example of being around the coals of the barbecue pit, or being in the coals. Where your position is will dictate how comfortable you can be. But look at 21. For what pleasure hath he in his house after him, when the number of his months is cut off in the midst? All right, so you can have the house, you can have wonderful things, and you're sitting there thinking you're going to enjoy it, but all of a sudden, what? You're cut off. And so what Job is saying is that this is the kind of stuff that I see. Things about wickedness are all over the place. I've seen the wicked do well in the natural realm, but yet Job is saying, but I do know wicked people will have their time for destruction. I know that will happen if they don't turn and come to the Lord. Look at 22. Surely, shall any teach God knowledge? In other words, can a person that thinks he knows what he's doing teach God? And that's what I was trying to emphasize earlier. Sometimes when we look at things and we want to call it what? Unfair. And the analogy I gave, like the parable that Jesus said, this guy worked all day, and then this guy worked 1 hour, and they both got the same pay. Now, we want to teach Jesus and say, Jesus, that was not fair. Now, from our perspective, we could explain to him why this guy's work seems to be more meaningful than this other guy's work, because he only worked 1 hour. And from our knowledge base, it seems like the other guy that worked 8 hours should get more money. But are we going to teach God, or are we going to let him be the teacher? Do we really believe he's a good judge? Or is our concepts of right and wrong superior to his? So what we have to do then is suspend sometimes the things that we look at from a human standpoint, because that's all it is. It's a human standpoint. It does not resonate in eternity, which is what God deals with. So he says, shall any teach God knowledge, seeing he judges those that are high? When God brings forth judgment, is anybody going to look at him and go, that wasn't correct? Let me show you, Lord. Let me teach you how to do this better. Nobody's going to do that. Look at 23. One dieth in the full strength, being wholly at ease and quiet. All right? So you got some that die when? Young, in full strength. That's always a sad situation. It's always a situation where you think that person had more to give, had more that they could have offered, but they died in their strength. Being wholly at ease and quiet, not having any issues, whatever. Look at 24. His breasts are full of milk, and his bones are moist and marrow. There was nothing wrong with him. Why should a person that's doing well, full of strength, full of vigor, fall? And so, once again, is that fair? Are we going to teach God that should not happen? If you're going to allow people to die, don't allow the strong, valiant one to move on. But once again, what are we talking about? Our own natural experience. Okay? 25. And another dieth in the bitterness of his soul, and never eateth with pleasure. And then he goes on, Job was saying, and then I've seen other people that died, lived a long, awful, horrible life, struggle every day, don't know what it is to have 2 good days back to back, always got some kind of issue, always got some kind of problem. Job says, I've seen this too. So what is Job saying? Job's trying to let them know, I don't get this, just like I don't get the wicked. I don't get how the wicked are all over the place. Some are doing well, some are struggling. I see people that are doing what I consider to be good, dying. I see all this stuff happening, and I can't explain it. So how can you guys tell me that you can explain to me why I'm going through what I'm going through? And so Job is really, I think, giving them a really good answer here and letting them know, we don't know what we're doing. What did Jesus say when he was nailed to the cross? He said, what? Father, forgive them. Why? For they, excuse me. He said, forgive them because they know not what they do. And what is he saying? These men, these rulers, these theologians, these priests, these high priests, they don't know what they're doing. They think they do. They think that they're working for God. They think they have God's best interest in mind. But in reality, they have no idea what they're doing. They're guessing and thinking and using their own natural, small, narrow-minded points of view to build on the realities and calling it God. And it's not. And that's what Job was pointing out to them. All right?
I think what you pointed out earlier, our limitation is this earth. God is eternal. Mm-hmm. So he's making decisions and setting up things that we cannot understand because it's internally minded. Mm-hmm. And we don't have that mind. Exactly. So we can't even think like that.
That's so true. That's so true. You know, I often think about it, and I can give this analogy.
I don't mean to be disrespectful, but it's right here in the book. If you really pay attention and listen, it's right here. It'll give you your answer right in here. That's all I have to say.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Well, let me give you this analogy sometimes of how, like what Penny was talking about not really seeing things from the spiritual standpoint. So we watch 2 people. Okay, I'm just gonna do a little word play here. Use your imagination. We got 2 people, right? And you got one person, and this one person he has a 10-pound bag, and he carries the 10-pound bag 100 yards. And you're like, wow, he carried that 10-pound bag 100 yards. That was pretty good. And you got another guy, he has a 10-pound bag, and he carries it just 10 yards. Now, one carried it 100 yards, the other one carried it. So who carried it further? From our perspective, of course, the guy that carried the 10-pound bag 100 yards carried it further. Now, if we take away the curtain that covers the spiritual, and we could look and see what's happening in the spiritual realm, we would then see things that we can't see in the natural. And then all of a sudden, the guy that carried the 10-pound bag only 10 yards, we now see in the spiritual, he also has a 500-pound spiritual weight on him that we would never see in the natural, that he's carrying in his spirit. So in reality, he's carrying more weight. It looks like from the natural, both guys are carrying 10 pounds. But that's only if we're looking just at the natural. But in my analogy, if you take away the curtain of the spiritual, one guy's carrying a 10-pound bag, another guy's carrying a 10-pound bag plus a 500-pound bag spiritually. So who's really carrying the more weight? Now, we don't see the spiritual side. So that's why it seems to be unequal when certain things happen because we only see the natural. If we
Right.
were
We don't see all the load that someone is carrying.
exactly, we don't see the whole load. Yeah,
Right.
we think we do.
Yeah, we think we see the whole picture, but we don't. We don't.
Right.
And so therefore that's why we need to and even that is still a very poor analogy as to how and what God sees.
That's why he tells us not to
Right.
judge.
The guy is carrying the 10-pound bag 10 yards. Now that's put on his shoulders.
Exactly. And so we have to make sure that we allow God to speak to us and to give us the discernment to know when somebody may be struggling with things greater than what we can just see.
Than ourselves.
And we still may not be able to explain it. Well, why do you think they're struggling more than somebody else? I don't know. I can't explain it. But from a spiritual standpoint, I just kind of get it that they're going through more. Although it looks like these guys are going through the same thing. No, somebody else is dealing with it deeper. And that's about the best way I can explain that.
That the guy is just weaker than the other person.
Yeah, that's what they'll say. They'll say this guy's weaker. All right, now let's look at verse 26. It says, "They shall lie down alike in the dust, and the worm shall cover them." So what is he talking about?
We all want that.
The one that's wicked and died, the one that was good and died young, all of them are going to die, and they're going to end up in the same place. How? Naturally. They're all going to end up, the scripture says, from dust we came, and to dust we shall return. All right? And so, from a natural standpoint, it don't really matter if you live wicked or if you live good. Naturally, you're going back to the dust and the worms are going to eat you. So then what does it matter? Spiritually. That's what's important. So what Job is saying here, it don't really amount to anything what you do naturally. What is really important is what do you do spiritually, because the natural piece will all equal out. The spiritual piece is where you will have advantage or disadvantage. That's the key. That's the piece where you may have a problem if you don't acknowledge God. So when you look up there in the beginning part where Job was saying that the wicked say, why should I acknowledge God? Why should I give him any focus or any attention? You know, what is the Almighty that I should serve him? Well, you may not see it in the natural, but you're going to see it spiritually. You'll see it at some point. The scripture says that every knee shall bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus is Lord. All right. Verse 27. Behold, I know your thoughts and the devices which ye wrongfully imagine against me. So now Job was going back to them, letting them know, I know how you're thinking, and you are wrongfully applying this stuff to me. 28. For ye say, where is the house of the prince? And where are the dwelling places of the wicked? So where's the powerful and where's the wicked? All right. We know where the prince lives. They live in good stuff. And you say, well, where does the wicked live? And they live in bad places. Well, Job just illustrated and just showed that that doesn't always work out. Sometimes good people die bad deaths, and sometimes wicked people live long, healthy, strong, prosperous lives. So Job is pointing that out. 29. Have ye not asked them that go by the way, and do ye not know their tokens? In other words, those that have actually traveled, that have actually gone into eternity, have you spoken to them? All right. That the wicked is reserved to the day of destruction. Because if you went to talk to the people that already went there, they would tell you that the wicked will be destroyed. They will have it. And how do we know that? Because we've been there? I haven't been there. Well, how do I know that? Well, I don't know it. I believe it. I believe and I know what I believe. But I can't tell you, oh, I know how it is. I've been there. I haven't been there. So I have what's called my evidence becomes my what? Is my what? Faith. My faith is the evidence of the things that I can't see. So I have to use faith as my evidence. And it goes on, they shall be brought forth to the day of wrath. That's for sure. 31. Who shall declare his way to his face? So who's going to stand before God, look God in the face, and tell God, let me tell you why I did what I did? Who's going to do that? Nobody's going to be able to do that. That don't make no sense. Job was asking that question. Who's going to declare to God to his face? And who shall repay him what he hath done? Who's going to pay his own bill? Well, God, you know what? What's my bill, Lord, for all that I've done on earth? Let me pay it. You don't have it. Only God could pay that bill. And he did. And you just have to accept it. 32. Yet shall he be brought to the grave, and shall remain in the tomb. That's what happens to the natural man. The clods of the valleys shall be sweet unto him, and every man shall draw after him, as there are innumerable before him. In other words, you're going to go to the grave, you're going to decompose, your body's going to become part of the nutrients and the soils, just like what? Everybody else had happened before you. All those who were before you, that's what happened to them, and that's what's going to happen to us. And what does that speak of? That speaks of the natural man. It don't matter, really, in the natural realm, whether you suffer or whether you have prosperity. That, when it's all said and done, is going to amount to nothing. It's only about what you do spiritually. What are you doing for the Lord? All right. Our final verse. How then comfort ye me in vain? Look at them. So he's saying, yeah, you're saying all this stuff about what I've done. All your comfort that you're trying to give to me, it's not working. It's in vain. Seeing your answers, there remaineth falsehoods. You're talking things that are not true. And Job spent a few verses here. I think he kind of did this extremely well, pointing out to them, okay, I got you. You're not ever. I don't think I'm going to change you. You guys got your mindset. But let me explain something here to you. You think you know what happened. You think I'm wicked. And because you think I'm wicked, you're thinking that's why I got all this stuff going on. My children are dead. My cattle was stolen. My skin is all messed up. And that's what happens to the wicked. Okay, what about the wicked that do well? And we've all seen it. We've all seen them happen. We've seen them do well. And he bounced that up and builds that whole argument. And then he talks about, now what about those that suffer bad that don't seem to be wicked? And so he's bringing a very plausible and very understandable argument to his friends and trying to get them, now explain this to me. And why are you then accusing me of something that's not true? And he stops there. Now, so we're going to stop there too. And Lord willing, on next week, we'll pick up. You think that after Job said all of this stuff, that his friends would go, you know what, Job, you make a lot of sense. That's not what's going to happen. His friends are going to be right after him again. Eliphaz is waiting for Job to just pause so he can come in what he wants to say. And this is going to continue on. And you know, the only thing that's going to stop this, God is going to intervene. And when God intervenes, he's going to set the record straight. And man, does that speak to us? A lot of times we think we know what we know. We can explain things so well. But you know who's going to have the last word? The Lord. You know, I'm sitting here, I'm running my mouth, I'm talking about all this. And at least I'm going to tell you, I don't think I know all that I'm trying to explain to you. I may not get it right. And even the stuff that I think I might know right, it ain't 100% got to be always the way it is. But I'm trying to give you what I know is revealed through the Word. But when it's all said and done, we got to listen to the Lord. You know, we can't just go off of what, any individual or any trend or any historical thing has said, because there's a lot of things that people do out of just tradition, but Jesus told us about the traditions of men and how problematic that can be. All right, so we're going to stop there. Any other comments or questions on what we've talked about?